Hawaii, 132 islands that stretch across the center of the Pacific Ocean, a necklace of tropical jewels. We'll see how the ancient Hawaiians cooked, whip up some great tasting recipes using some of the island's healthiest native foods, and we'll discover the fruit that keeps the goddess of the volcanoes content. So join me in Hawaii at Burt Wolf's table. The ancient Hawaiians had a story about how their people came to be. They believed that their history began in the deep darkness below the earth. Boy, how right they were. The islands that make up Hawaii are actually the tops of a chain of mountains that have pushed themselves up from the bottom of the ocean floor. Hot magma is forced up from the very center of the planet. It drives its way through standing vents in the Earth's crust. It escapes through fractures on the floor of the Pacific Ocean and begins to form volcanoes. The volcanoes build up for thousands of feet until they break through the surface of the water. The mountains that make up Hawaii are some of the biggest mountains on Earth, bigger than Mount Everest. It's estimated that the process may have started about 45 million years ago, and it's still going on. For the Hawaiian, the gods of creation are still very busy. The best way to get a good look at what has been created is from a helicopter. Papillon Hawaiian Helicopters is the world's largest helicopter sightseeing company. Larry Lariosa, one of their pilots, is the third generation of his family born in Hawaii, and he has a great deal of knowledge about the islands and their history. His helicopter gives you a unique ability to discover the area. You can just drop in wherever you like. These islands were the last major body of land to be discovered by European explorers. They were first seen by Captain James Cook in 1778. He called them the Sandwich Islands in honor of his friend John Montagu, who was the Earl of Sandwich, First Lord of the Admiralty, and most important, the inventor of the sandwich.
What we'll do here is we'll just sneak on down here, get a better view of the shoreline area.
These all look like they were lava flows.
Yes, they were.
You can see how the lava dripped down, formed everything.
True, very true. This is one of the most interesting points, I believe, here on the island. The eastern point of the island, Makapu'u, translated bulging eye. The tiny island, Turtle Island. The larger, Manana Island, translated Rabbit Island. And here on our left side, Sea Life Park, where they put on a beautiful show with the dolphins and the killer whale 7 days a week. I know it sounds like a sales pitch. It is. My cousin works there. Gotta help out the family. Now, this is another interesting area, Hanauma Bay. Here at Hanauma Bay, you can jump in the water, wade out on the shallow side with a handful of fish, but they'll come right up to you, eat it right off the palm of your hands.
So this was a crater
Yes.
of a volcano and one side of it dropped away.
You got it. Here's an interesting point on our left hand, the fish pond. That's 1 of 25 which we now have around the island. A lot of them are still being used by island fishermen to store fish which they had caught out in the ocean with nets.
You know, that's interesting because we're beginning to farm fish in the United States now.
That's
and
true.
people think it's a brand new thing and it's been going on for thousands of years.
That's true.
It's a lot easier to grow a fish than to catch one.
It is. It is.
What a lovely, unspoiled valley.
Looking at all the plants and flowers that we have here around the islands, we've got over 2,500 species, of which 1,700 indigenous to the islands. Now here coming up ahead of us on our left front, this is the sugar fields. The dark green is about a year old, the lighter brown 22 to 24 months. Sugar requires 2,000 pounds of fresh water to produce just 1 pound of raw sugar. Amazing.
Pineapples.
There's over 25 species of pineapple in the world. It's hand-planted and hand-picked. And of course, in front of us, the infamous North Shore surfing beaches. During the winter months, November to March, the waves out here could possibly get up to 35 feet.
It's a nice way to spend the Monday morning.
You got it. Oh, you want to see something interesting here? For $35 million, you can pick up this home here.
If I had $35 million, I wouldn't pick up anything.
It's a beautiful phrase that I tell a lot of people. Meke aloha, pauhole ahoi ho translates with everlasting love and affection until we meet again.
To understand the food of Hawaii, you need to take a look at the ethnic groups that have immigrated to these islands. The early groups were from Polynesia, particularly the island of Tahiti. Their major food festival was called a luau. Authentic luau's are presented from time to time as charity events, but you can see a visitor's version at Germain's. Germain's was started in the 70s by a woman who wanted to give people a sense of what Hawaiian hospitality is like, and it turns out to be a lot of fun.
To the right and to the left. Hitchhike. Way up in the air and pull, girls, pull. A fish, a fish. Hitchhike. Way up in the air and pull, girls. Hooky needs to pull and pull. One more time. Step back with your left foot, touch your shoulders, and throw a kiss. Throw a kiss. Oh, how about another hand for our girls out there?
Preparation for a luau centers around an imu, an ancient form of oven dug into the ground. The base and the walls of the pit are lined with a fragrant wood and lava stones. A pig goes in and is surrounded with tea and banana leaves. The fire heats up, the meat is covered, it cooks in the steam, and 10 to 12 hours later, you are ready for the ultimate pig out. The luau is a way of bringing all the members of a family together for a shared experience. A food that's served at every luau is poi, a paste made from a baked root and pounded into a thick concentrate. The root is called taro. Taro is a tropical plant. For thousands of years, it has been the basic starch for many cultural groups living in the South Pacific. It was originally brought to Hawaii by the Polynesians about 1,500 years ago, and it quickly became a food of great importance. It's grown in a patch fed by running water and harvested by hand. The root is baked and made into a puree called poi. It has a taste somewhere between artichoke hearts and chestnuts. The islanders realized that poi could be wrapped up in leaves and would hold its nutritional value for months at a time. That made it the ideal food to take along on long ocean voyages or to stock up with to make sure you had a secure food supply. These days, taro is used in Hawaii to make the traditional poi, but you also find it in stuffings, cakes, breads, and stews. The leaves are used as if they were spinach. Taro root and the leaves are an excellent source of protein. They also contain vitamin A, vitamin C, niacin, thiamine, riboflavin, calcium, and iron. The actual starch molecules are so small that they are usually easily digested by infants, the elderly, and people on restricted diets. So, taro a moment in Hawaii and taste the poi that refreshes. The luau and poi are essential elements in Hawaiian culture, and so are leis. The Hawaiian lei is a delicate necklace usually made from flowers, but sometimes constructed of shells, leaves, nuts, or feathers. Traditionally, they were worn as head wreaths, necklaces, and bracelets. They were worn during religious dances and considered as important offerings to the gods. A lei used in a sacred ceremony was thought of as the personal property of the deity to whom the ceremony was dedicated. Each part of a lei has a specific significance. They are made with care and offered with great affection. Even today, leis are a very important part of Hawaiian society. Many tourists receive them when they arrive on the islands, but leis are also used by Hawaiians for all major and many minor occasions. Births, weddings, funerals, parties, and any time you want to express trust and affection. The lei is clearly a symbol of Hawaiian folklore, but so is the hula. Every Sunday morning, for well over a decade, children have performed the hula at the Ala Moana Center. The ritual of this dance is very complex and was always an important part of religious services. It was central to a series of acts that were meant to establish contact with the ancient gods. In the old days, entering a hula school for a Hawaiian was the same as entering a monastery. Some hulas are designed to influence events in the future, much as praying is used in other societies. The hula is an extraordinary folk art, and its preservation a tribute to Hawaiian society. His name is George Mavrothalisatis. He was born in the south of France on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea and trained with some of the great chefs of Paris. These days, he is the executive chef at a magnificent restaurant in Waikiki called La Mer. Today, George is preparing a fish with a salsa made from local papayas. A quarter cup of lime juice goes into a bowl, plus a little salt, white pepper, chopped jalapeno pepper, and fresh ginger.
I prefer to chop like that than to grate. To grate because you keep the juice of the ginger inside when you cut finely like that.
That gets mixed together with a half cup of olive oil, a little garlic, a half cup of chopped onion, same amount of papaya, and diced red bell pepper. A tablespoon of cilantro completes the salsa, which then rests for about an hour to let the flavors blend. While that's happening, a piece of fish steak is trimmed. What George was doing was trimming away the dark part of the fish. Whenever you have a piece of fish and you see one of these dark cores, cut it out. If there are impurities in the fish, this is where they're stored. A little salt goes onto the fish and some of the liquid from the salsa to keep it moist. And into a steamer over water for 8 minutes. When the fish comes out, it goes onto a leaf-covered plate and the papaya salsa goes on top. Shortly after Columbus landed in the Caribbean, he noted in his logbook that the natives were very strong and lived largely on a tree melon called the fruit of the angels. The particular fruit that Columbus was actually talking about was the papaya. European countries with trading companies in the Caribbean, like England, France, and Portugal, were also doing business in the South Pacific, and they brought papayas to Hawaii. If you see a papaya fresh in a U.S. market, the odds are 1,000 to 1 that it was grown here in Hawaii. Papaya is a major crop here. When you're picking out a papaya in your market, look for ones that have a smooth and unblemished skin. The green color should be gone and replaced by a golden yellow-orange. A half a papaya has about 80 calories, and it's a good source of vitamin C, vitamin A, and potassium. They can be served as a fruit with a spray of lemon or lime juice to enhance the flavor, in salads, or as the container for seafood or chicken recipes. Hawaiian chefs use papaya to make jams, jellies, sherbets, and drinks. Perhaps the most unusual quality to a papaya is its ability to tenderize meat. The juice of a green papaya contains an enzyme that's actually used to make commercial tenderizers. When a volcano would erupt in Hawaii, an offering of meat was thrown into the fiery lava to quiet down Pele, the goddess who was in charge of all volcanoes. When you did that, you threw in a papaya too, just to make sure that the meat offering would be tender. You know, it's a small touch, but it's the kind of thing that a goddess always appreciates. And any goddess would also appreciate this recipe for swordfish with a watercress crust. A piece of swordfish is trimmed into a steak. A little vegetable oil goes into a pan. Then in goes the fish. 1 minute of cooking on the first side, a gentle flip, and 1 minute of cooking on the second side.
This was, I have to say, this was my best surprise in Hawaii. This watercress is just great for cooking. You know, in France we use English watercress, and it's very good for soup and for salad. This watercress to make puree,
like a
to make
vegetable.
sauce, God, it's just gorgeous. It's very peppery. It's very, very, very nice.
The watercress is pureed in a blender with a little vegetable oil, and it's mixed together with the white of an egg and a little salt and pepper. That mixture is spread out on top of the fish steak into a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for 3 minutes, and it's ready to serve. Some braised leeks go onto a serving plate, and the fish with a watercress crust, and some sliced carrots that have been cooked with a little butter, sugar, and fresh ginger. The watercress crust is a great idea. Watercress is actually a very important crop in Hawaii. Right smack in the middle of Aiea, Hawaii, is the Sumida Farm. 11 acres that have resisted the developer's concrete for almost 100 years. Since the turn of the century, the Sumida family has used this land to cultivate a delicate crop of watercress. Watercress is a peppery-flavored green leafy plant that grows along the sides of flowing water. The water on the Sumida farm comes from this ancient natural spring. Watercress has been part of the human diet for thousands of years. As a matter of fact, the ancient Greeks thought of it as a health food, and they would feed it to their soldiers before they went into battle. About 2,000 years later, the British Navy had pretty much the same approach. They would feed it to their sailors to prevent scurvy, a disease that you get if you don't have enough vitamin C in your diet. Well, both the ancient Greeks and the British Navy certainly knew what they were talking about. Watercress is packed with vitamin C, and it also contains lots of minerals that are very important to your health. These days, we're finding out that watercress also contains beta-carotene, which is a building block for vitamin A, and may turn out to be a very important cancer blocker. Most of the watercress grown in Hawaii goes into the dishes of the large Asian population. The peppery flavor adds a natural zest. It's one of the island's favorite leafy vegetables. When you think about the foods of Hawaii, watercress may not be the first thing that comes to mind. The superstar of Hawaiian produce is the pineapple, and it is the basis for one of Georgia's most popular desserts. A pineapple is trimmed of its outside rind and sliced lengthwise into 6 wedges. The core strip is cut off, and the wedges sliced into bite-sized pieces. The pieces go into a heated nonstick pan. No oil or butter in the pan, just the hot surface. The heat of the surface caramelizes the natural sugar in the pineapple, and you end up with a crisp brown crust. Turn the pineapple pieces until you see the crust forming. The total cooking time should be about a minute on each side. When they're ready, they get spread out on your favorite pastry crust that's been cut into an 8-inch disc and baked until done. Little pineapple sauce goes around the dough and a decoration of guava. The ancient Hawaiians called it wave sliding, and it was a symbolic act that dealt with conquering fear and understanding the changes of life. It was also a lot of fun. As early as the 14th century, Hawaiians were singing songs about the achievements of the great surfers. Important chiefs would surf against each other, the winners receiving large plots of land from the losers. England's Captain Cook and his crew first saw surfers in the 1770s and wrote in their logbook that these men feel the most supreme pleasure. The boldness with which they perform these difficult and dangerous maneuvers is astonishing and scarce to be believed. Well, I'll tell you, 200 years have passed since then, but I feel pretty much the way Captain Cook did. Surfing became a sport right here on Waikiki Beach in the early 1900s when a group of local surfers organized a club. I think for a man my age to learn to surf now would be a little nuts. And if I'm going to deal with little nuts in Hawaii, it's going to be those macadamias. Macadamia nuts are the seeds of a tropical tree that was originally a native of Australia. It was named after John McAdam, a chemist who lived during the mid-1800s and promoted the plant in Australia. Macadamia nuts originally arrived in Hawaii in the 1880s and were thought of primarily as an ornamental plant rather than a source of nuts because a macadamia nut is a tough nut to crack. As a matter of fact, when automobiles first arrived in Hawaii, they were used to open macadamia nuts. They take 2 planks of wood, put the nuts in between, and drive the car over the top to break the protective shells. These days, that job is done by commercial rollers that produce over 300 pounds of pressure per square inch. But it's all worth it. Inside is a delicate, crisp meat that seems to melt into a sweet, creamy flavor. Today, Hawaii produces 90% of the world's macadamia nuts, and local companies present them in many different ways, including chocolate-covered, in brittle, and as cookies. Macadamia nuts contain about 100 calories in a half-ounce portion, and their fat is unsaturated, which is good. They also have some phosphorus, some iron, B1, and a little bit of calcium. The vacuum-packed cans will last for about 2 years, but as soon as you open them, you should refrigerate the contents. Macadamia nuts are a common ingredient in Hawaiian dishes. Chef Jamin at the Kahala Hilton uses them in his recipe for Hawaiian brownies. 2 cups of sugar go into a mixing bowl, a half teaspoon of salt, 9 ounces of butter, a 1/4 cup of corn syrup, and lots of mixing.
This should be easily made at home in the mixer. Eh?
Then you don't get the great Hawaiian sun, but you do get a much fluffier mixture.
You know, Burt, we're in Hawaii. I'm getting tired with the sun. It's your turn now.
Okay. All of the ingredients need to be well mixed. Then in goes 1 cup of cocoa powder, 4 eggs, 1 cup of flour, and 2 cups of chopped macadamia nuts. When all the ingredients are fully incorporated, an 11 by 17 jelly roll pan is lined with parchment paper. The batter gets poured in and spread out, a garnish of chopped macadamia nuts on top, and into a preheated 325-degree Fahrenheit oven for 30 minutes. When it comes out, you get a bunch of brownies that could drive you nuts. The chef likes to serve the brownies with a scoop of ice cream on top, some hot fudge, strawberries, and whipped cream. You know, it fits perfectly into my weight loss diet because I just share it with the other 231 guests at the hotel. And what a hotel it is. When travel writers rank the world's finest resorts, the Kahala Hilton is regularly included. It sits on the edge of a secluded white sandy beach on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. For over 25 years, it has lured travelers in search of a peaceful and private rest. Paddle boating, snorkeling, windsurfing, scuba diving, or just lazing on a raft in the brilliant Hawaiian sun. There's an oceanside pool for those who prefer freshwater swimming, and a man-made lagoon which has become home to 3 bottlenose dolphins, waterfalls, lush gardens, and an oceanside lounge that was a regular setting for scenes in Magnum P.I. The Kahala Hilton is also well known for its food. Executive chef Dominique Jamin trained in a number of fine restaurants in his homeland of France and perfected his skills in Montreal, Canada, before coming to Hawaii. Today, the foods of Hawaii result from the many ethnic groups who have applied their homeland kitchen techniques to the local produce, including ginger. Ginger originated in Southeast Asia and was transplanted to the warm parts of our planet thousands of years ago. Ancient documents show ginger being traded in the Mediterranean in the 1st century AD, and it shows up in English recipes by the 1100s. The Spanish planted it in the Caribbean right after the arrival of Columbus. And Chef Dominique Jamin puts that Hawaiian ginger to work in a recipe for fish with a ginger pesto sauce. Start by peeling the skin of a hand of ginger and slicing up about a ½ cup's worth. Peel and crush 4 cloves of garlic. A little vegetable oil goes into a hot pan, then the ginger and the garlic. A few flips while it's cooking, then into a blender. An ounce of cashew nuts, a few pine nuts, a few macadamia nuts, some cilantro, a few basil leaves, the juice of a lemon, and a little vegetable oil. A hit of Tabasco and a little sesame oil. A little tasting. Salt and pepper goes onto a piece of red snapper. The snapper goes into a saucepan. Fish stock and lemon juice are added and brought to a simmer so the fish can cook for about 8 minutes. At that point, the fish is removed to a serving plate. A touch of cream goes into the pan, and the sauce is cooked down until it thickens. Then in goes the ginger pesto.
Now, it really looks ono.
What does ono mean?
Ono means in Hawaiian, delicious.
The fish goes onto a serving plate, a few vegetables, and the sauce. Every day, somewhere on the islands of Hawaii, there is a rainbow, a perfect symbol for the natural beauty of this area. But it's also an excellent symbol for what's happening here culturally. Hawaii is made up of dozens of different ethnic groups, different sizes, different colors, different shapes, different philosophies, different languages, and different religions. And yet they live side by side with virtually no tension. It is a rainbow of people, more beautiful than any rainbow I have seen anywhere else in the world. And as they exchange their appreciation for each other's culture, they exchange their appreciation for each other's foods. And that has a lot to teach us about eating well. Please join us next time as we travel around the world looking for things that taste good and make it easier to eat well. I'm Burt Wolf. Hawaii, 132 islands that stretch across the center of the Pacific Ocean, a necklace of tropical jewels. We'll see how the ancient Hawaiians cooked, whip up some great tasting recipes using some of the island's healthiest native foods, and we'll discover the fruit that keeps the goddess of the volcanoes content. So join me in Hawaii at Burt Wolf's table. The ancient Hawaiians had a story about how their people came to be. They believed that their history began in the deep darkness below the earth. Boy, how right they were. The islands that make up Hawaii are actually the tops of a chain of mountains that have pushed themselves up from the bottom of the ocean floor. Hot magma is forced up from the very center of the planet.
Translated bulging eye. The tiny island, Turtle Island. The larger, Manana Island, translated Rabbit Island. And here on our left side, Sea Life Park, where they put on a beautiful show with the dolphins and the killer whale 7 days a week. I know it sounds like a sales pitch. It is. My cousin works there. Gotta help out the family. Now, this is another interesting area, Hanauma Bay. Here at Hanauma Bay, you can jump in the water. Wade out on the shallow side with a handful of fish, but they'll come right up to you, eat it right off the palm of your hands.
So this was a crater
Yes.
of a volcano and one side of it dropped away.
You got it. Here's an interesting point on our left hand, the fish pond. That's 1 of 25 which we now have around the island. A lot of them are still being used by island fishermen to store fish which they had caught out in the ocean with nets.
You know, that's interesting because we're beginning to farm fish in the United States.
It drives its way through standing vents in the Earth's crust. It escapes through fractures on the floor of the Pacific Ocean and begins to form volcanoes. The volcanoes build up for thousands of feet until they break through the surface of the water. The mountains that make up Hawaii are some of the biggest mountains on Earth, bigger than Mount Everest. It's estimated that the process may have started about 45 million years ago, and it's still going on. For the Hawaiian, the gods of creation are still very busy. The best way to get a good look at what has been created is from a helicopter. Papillon Hawaiian Helicopters is the world's largest helicopter sightseeing company. Larry Lariosa, one of their pilots, is the third generation of his family born in Hawaii, and he has a great deal of knowledge about the islands and their history. His helicopter gives you a unique ability to discover the area.
States now,
That's
and
true.
people think it's a brand new thing and it's been going on for thousands of years.
That's true.
It's a lot easier to grow a fish than to catch one.
It is. It is.
What a lovely, unspoiled valley.
Looking at all the plants and flowers that you have here around the islands, we've got over 2,500 species, of which 1,700 indigenous to the islands. Now here coming up ahead of us on our left front, this is the sugar fields. The dark green is about a year old, the lighter brown 22 to 24 months. Sugar requires 2,000 pounds of fresh water to produce just 1 pound of raw sugar. Amazing.
Pineapples.
There's over 25 species of pineapple in the world. It's hand-planted and hand-picked. And of course, in front of us, the infamous North.
You can just drop in wherever you like. These islands were the last major body of land to be discovered by European explorers. They were first seen by Captain James Cook in 1778. He called them the Sandwich Islands in honor of his friend John Montagu, who was the Earl of Sandwich, First Lord of the Admiralty, and most important, the inventor of the sandwich.
What we'll do here is we'll just sneak on down here, get a better view of the shoreline area.
These all look like they were lava flows.
Yes, they were.
You can see how the lava dripped down, formed everything.
True, very true. This is one of the most interesting points, I believe, here on the island. The eastern point of the island, Makapu'u.